Welcome to the Top Advisor Podcast, brought to you by Proud Mouse PodRocket Academy. I'm your host, Bill Cates, creator of the Cates Academy for Relationship Marketing. In each episode, I interview one of our industry's top performers, getting them to pass on their secrets to success to you, so that you can impact more lives and generate more income. Now, on to the show. Welcome. I want to start off with a bit of a barrage of questions for you. Are you hosting client events, educational events, social events? Do you have a clear sense of what makes a successful event for you? And are your events living up to that expectation? Do you feel like you may be underutilizing this strategy that really so many advisors say has a huge impact on their business? In today's show, we're going to be talking about the incredible value of hosting client events, how you can use events to increase your client loyalty, capture more assets and other business, and use events to meet new clients. Wherever you are on the event success spectrum, I think you're going to find today's show interesting and helpful. But before we get into today's show, I want to let you know about some free resources that I invite you to retrieve after you've listened to today's interview. You'll find checklists, guides, videos, other tools. Simply go to referralcoach.com/resources. Now write this down unless you're driving, referralcoach.com/resources. And it's also in the show notes. While you're there, make sure you sign up for our weekly tips. We're always sharing best practices, and we'll notify you of our newest podcast interviews as they go live. And while these are free to you, I think you'll find them quite valuable. Now, on with today's show. Over the 30 plus years I've been in this business, I have coached and interviewed many financial advisors who are all over the map when it comes to success with client events. For this Top Advisor podcast show in general, I've interviewed several advisors who can attest to the relationship building and business building impact of client events. And today, we have two women who run a company called Event Advisors. As the name implies, they are advisors to the financial services industry, financial advisors and planners, wholesalers and broker-dealers, all with the goal of helping them create more productive events. In their bio on their website, event-advisors.net, that's www.event-advisors.net, Angela York and Elyse Stoner write, "Good did come from the pandemic of 2020. We met, discovered our mutual belief in the marketing power of events, and started sharing it with the financial services ecosystem. Angela mixes her in-house advisor marketing experience and her consultant knowledge with Elyse's hands-on sports, entertainment, and higher education strategic event marketing, planning, and production skills to provide a truly unique view of how financial services events can be effective in the 21st century. Without further ado, and that was a lot of ado, I'll admit, Angela York zooming in from Orange County, California, and Elyse Stoner zooming in from the greater Philadelphia area. Welcome to Top Advisor Podcast.
Thank you, Bill, for having us. It's our pleasure. As you mentioned, I am in Orange County, California, born and raised in Southern California. I have sat in the event implementer seat at an advisory firm for almost a decade. My career spans several decades, focusing in on event implementation and marketing plan implementation, specifically in the advisor services industry. I enjoy bringing the strategy into events with Elyse because events used to be done the same way over and over. And the strategy allows us to put a completely different lens into the event planning space. And by introducing events into firms that have never done them before, as well as really looking at the events and making them successful for those that have done them many, many times and say that they haven't worked.
So I've heard that a lot. Elyse, do you want to add to that before I ask some questions?
Sure. So as you mentioned in our intro, I don't come from the financial services ecosystem. I come from the sports and entertainment and higher education space and have lived all over the country. I don't know how many folks have ever played the party game of two truths and a lie, but I always love the one where I can say, I've lived in every time zone in the continental United States. I've flown in a helicopter with Bart Simpson, and I've been on a date with a rodeo clown. And actually, I've only lived in 3 of the continental US time zones. I haven't lived in Mountain, but I've lived in Pacific, I've lived in Central, and obviously currently in East Coast. But I have been in a helicopter with Bart Simpson, and I have been on a date with a rodeo clown.
Well, I got to say that it makes you unique because I can't say there are many people who've said that before. So let's jump in and let me ask you why you believe client events should be an integral part of an advisor's business. More specifically, what are the various benefits that advisors might expect to gain by putting the right amount of focus and effort into hosting different types of client events?
So I know that a lot of our listeners are numbers people.
Mm-hmm.
So let me share a few stats with you to kind of set the stage. So Freeman, which is an event production company, did a survey, and they said 77% of consumers say that their trust increased somewhat or a lot following their interaction with a brand. So we think about that as a firm, right? And according to Snappy Kraken's 2024 State of Digital report, client events are one of the best ways to increase referrals as well. So if that's what you want to do and you want to build trust, increase referrals, the numbers show that this is a great place to do that. Like I said, I come from the sports world. So I use a lot of sports analogies. This whole idea of events, we think about it like, think about when you go to a college football game, right? You build this camaraderie with the people that you're sitting with. You're all kind of there for one reason, usually cheering for a team, or hopefully the people next to you are cheering for the same team, because that could get a little awkward. But it's that shared experience. That's why these events are so powerful. You are creating events where your clients are sharing an experience with you and with each other. And that has what we refer to as positive emotional memory. And we'll talk a little bit later about how to kind of capitalize on that. But that is really the key. That's the magic. You're creating this trust, this connection, and this community through client events. And that's how it helps build business.
Positive emotional memory.
Yes.
I like that. I one of the things that I teach is that when clients who like you and trust you get together with other clients who like you and trust you, they all leave liking you and trusting you more. I think that's called congruency theory, but it's the same basic idea. So I've coached and interviewed many advisors who've had great success with client events, both educational and social. At the end of the show, I'm going to mention a few other interviews that I recommend you check out. But I've also spoken with advisors who've not been happy with their events. Either the event themselves didn't go as smoothly as they hoped for, or the events haven't produced the results they wanted. In your experience, why do events underperform? What are some of the factors that go on there that underperform?
So here's the flip side of working with folks who spend a lot of time in the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
When you are trying to judge the success of your event and you're using ROI, the secret we love to tell people is it's never going to work. The whole idea of ROI, right? I spent this, I got that. It just doesn't apply to events because of so many of the fixed costs and because your people are kind of on their own journey. So to say I spent this and I got X amount of AUM, not everybody who's in the room is at that place where they're ready to invest more. So what we do and what we teach people is instead of ROI, we believe in ROM, which is return on the moment. Think about a stream and that there are rocks in this stream. The stream is your marketing, it's your business strategy. The rocks are the different tactics that you use to move your business along. We like to think of the events as some of those rocks in the stream, and it's about setting goals for the success of that rock. That's how you can really measure the success of an event, and having goals and objectives. And we'll talk a little bit more about what ROM, kind of how that all breaks down. But it's really about measuring that and saying, was it a success or not, versus strictly using the ROI.
Well, I suppose that some events are geared towards just saying thank you. They're appreciation events. Probably pretty hard to measure that other than just the good feelings and people saying thank you and the follow-up emails or texts you might get from clients. Some events are geared towards introductions. So there you can probably determine whether it's successful or not, right? Did you get introduced to any new folks? So they're probably, each event is different, right? So the expectation is different. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's along the lines versus if you're saying, I mean, we hear a lot of advisors say, I spent all this money on this client appreciation event, and I don't know if it worked. And again, I spent a lot of money. So that's why we talk about, how do you measure, like, are people saying positive things? Are you getting social media hits? Are people doing follow-up meetings? There's a whole list of things that we walk through with our clients when we're doing our collaborative coaching that helps them sort of set that framework based on their business goals, to say, okay, this is how we're going to judge whether this event, this moment, was successful or not.
I know that a lot of advisors will say to clients, hey, we're having this appreciation event. Feel free to bring a guest. Kind of loose about it, right? Not very purposeful. And some clients bring a guest, some don't. Some of those guests are interested, most aren't. They just want the event. So I think being clear on the purpose of the event is pretty important. So that's where I want to kind of go to the next question. My listeners know that I like to work on the levels of strategic and tactical, and there's a difference between strategies and tactics. Let's start with the strategy. And so this is kind of a two-part question for you. What are the key elements of strategic event planning advisors should consider when organizing their events? In addition to that, how important is it to identify and prioritize event goals and objectives in the strategic planning process? So what impact does this have on the overall success of the event? So that's kind of a strategic question. Let's start there.
Okay. So I'm going to take the last part. I'm going to work backwards on this.
Okay, sure.
How important is it? 1,000,000,000%. Because again, that's not only how you can judge at the end of your cycle whether you've had success or not, but they're also the checkpoints along the way to make sure, as you're making different event and event marketing decisions, that you kind of have that measure. Like, why am I doing this? What is it? How is this going to help me achieve these goals and objectives? We talk about our ROM. And when people go to our website, they will see on there that we have this ROM wheel that we've created. And there's 5 steps in there. It's strategize, organize, promote, produce, and follow up. That business strategy and that event strategy plays into each and every one of those, picture arrows in the wheel. They're all connected. They're all the guide rails. And you're using those strategies as you're coming up with your tactics in each one of those spaces.
So let's give that again: strategize, organize,
promote.
Okay, makes sense.
Produce.
All right.
And follow up.
And then follow up. How critical is the follow up to an event?
Good follow-up is extremely critical. We talked about positive emotional memory, right? So the whole idea is people walk out of the room, they leave the Zoom, whatever your venue is, they've got this good positive emotional memory. Follow-up is the key to kind of keep the love going. We recommend to our clients that they plan their follow-up during the organizing portion of the ROM wheel.
Yeah.
So that, again, they're not going, oh my God, thank God that event's over. Oh my goodness, I have to come up with a follow-up strategy. Like, you already know what your follow-up strategy is, and you can grab pieces that you're going to use in your follow-up and understanding what your goals are for your feedback, that you can easily slide that into that follow-up section of the wheel.
I remember, I love this positive emotional memory thing. I remember interviewing an advisor many years ago, Jeffrey Chaddock, who actually interviewed for this podcast on his target market of philanthropists. That's another topic, but smart guy. And he was telling me about one of the best events he ever had was a sushi rolling class. And the reason he said, I remember the words he says, that it has a long mental shelf life. Right. The event, because it was different, it was something that people had never done before, had that long mental shelf life, so that positive emotional memory lasted a long time. So I would assume that certain events will, create that more than others, things that are maybe a little more unique. So that really leads me to my next question. So we're going to get a little more tactical here. What are some of the most successful events, educational or social, that you've seen advisors host? Maybe give us the type of events, as well as some of the results that were produced for the advisor, for the client. Let's bring this to life with some specifics here.
I'd be happy to bring it to life. Bill, the ideas are endless. And really what it comes down to is, what are the firm's business goals? Is it to develop relationships strictly with their clients? Is it to develop the relationships with their family, the generations to come? Is it to really get to know the women of the firm, the ones that are the spouses that may not be feeling comfortable coming to the meeting? So whatever those business goals are, we work with our clients to identify those. Then when you have the business goals, you can determine what type of events you want to hold. Then you develop the event goals. And this comes into play with that wheel that Elyse was talking about. And once you determine the business goals and the event goals, you can determine your ideal attendee, your ideal client, and your ideal attendee. Is it an event for women? Is it an event where your clients will bring a guest? Is it an event where you just want to celebrate your clients and not have guests? So all those variables come into play. Then we like to recommend that our clients interview their clients. So the advisors interview or ask their clients, what type of events would you like to see us hold? We want to start bringing some new events into our event calendar. What are you interested in? And this can be done casually in a review meeting. It can be done on email. It could be done on a survey. It can be done from one event to the next event, and find out what they're interested in. The sushi rolling event is really unique, and it's a great idea. But if the attendees or your clients don't eat sushi, it might not go over very well, and they might not want to attend. So you really have to look at those granular details on what they want. What they're looking for. Is it a virtual event? Do they want to be in person? Do they like large events? Do they like small events? Do they really want to learn more about financial education? Do they want to just have fun? Are they interested in gardening? So bringing it back to what I said, the ideas aren't endless on the type of events, and it boils down to what the ideal client and attendee are interested in. Because if they're not interested, they're not going to attend and make the time to come.
So all right, so we know that wine and cheese tasting, pretty classic, chocolate appreciation. I'm seeing a little bit of bourbon tasting events, tequila tasting events these days. My advisor has done a luau. He's done a gardening thing where we get put together a little herb gardens or something together at an event. I've seen people go to the racetrack. I've seen folks do minor league baseball. Minor league baseball is neat because it's less expensive and it's less formal, and you get a chance to hang out with each other a little bit differently than if it was a major league park. So what are some of the things that you've seen, whether unique or tried and true?
Well, both. So tried and true and unique have a space in the event calendar depending on your ideal attendee. The wine tasting events are classic, but you can also take a spin on that. It can be a small wine pairing, chef pairing dinner where you have the sommelier and the chef come and speak. You provide maybe a booklet on the region and they can write notes and take it away. This also ties into the follow-up. You can make note and ask which wines they liked, put that information into your database, and voila, that special wine shows up as an anniversary gift, a holiday gift. So that ties the follow-up into a classic event. There's also
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. You go.
So another classic event would be an economic summit, an investment symposium, financial education, taking those classic events, but spinning them where they provide value to your attendees. And that could be if they're interested in alternative investments, or they want to know, we're in an election year, specifics, how that's going to affect their markets. And really what that does is it educates and it provides an open platform for them to ask questions of you. It also provides an open platform for them to, when they bring their adult children to the events, to have tough conversations, whether it's about finance, whether it's long-term care, whether it's estate planning. It helps them bridge the gap between something that's a hard conversation to having that conversation with their advisor, to then bridging the gap with their family. So it's spinning a classic event to be tailored to your clients. Now, as far as something maybe unique and fun, we're seeing pickleball events. We're seeing golf tournaments that are, again, have a spin to it. We had an advisor that we worked with that was, their ideal client was a busy parent, in their 40s. They were maybe coaches on their kids' sports teams. They're sports fans. So we helped them create a sports clinic where it was a parent and a child, and we brought in a sports expert. Philanthropic events are always great, tying it into a philanthropy that is near and dear to the advisory firm and or the clients. Could be a volunteer day, could be a drive, and a drive can take all different shapes and sizes. If you're on the East Coast, it could be a mitten and sock drive. It could be a school supply drive. Right now, those are going on where clients will bring in backpacks and school supplies, and that gets donated to the local school districts. Of course, your classic food drives, toy drives.
I've seen so many creative things. It's fascinating. I want to go back to this idea you said about talking to your clients, because it's something that I've been preaching for a long time. Go to your clients, ask them about not just types of events, but also venues. Sometimes they have access to museums or skyboxes, or they have access to different kind of venues, ideas. More than once over the many years I've been teaching this, I've had advisors go to their clients, and some clients have actually volunteered to host events. And they say, oh, we love to entertain. We'd love to host one. We can invite our friends. We can invite our neighbors. So that idea of going to your clients and talking to them, I think is brilliant. Not just because I've been teaching it, but you've echoed it. So you mentioned virtual. I know that in 2020, the COVID hit, and for a couple of years there was a lot of virtual events. My advisor did a few. Did a trivia contest virtually. Are advisors still doing virtual events? Are they doing a mix now of in-person and virtual?
They are. Some are still doing virtual educational events. Some are still doing virtual social events. Some are doing a hybrid. Going back to the economic summit that I was speaking about a few minutes ago, you can live stream in those that want to attend virtually. And what this comes down to now, where it's not a requirement to host a virtual event, it comes down to what your clients want. What we found during the pandemic is when advisors were conducting virtual events, they were reaching top clients that normally weren't coming to their events because they weren't in the same geographical area. So what this did is opened up the mindset of being able to have events to reach clients, top clients that weren't in their area. And the virtual modality is a great way to do it. We
Right.
also have been working with our clients to take their event show on the road. So if you want to do you have a pocket of clients in a geographical area that isn't your area, you go there and create a small little dinner or small individual dinners. So there's ways to do it, but going back to virtual events, it really is predicated on if the client wants to join. If they won't join, or they're too busy to join, or really like that in-person rubbing elbows and being able to see things on the screen and talk to people, they're not going to log on. So it really depends what they want. So again, it's still virtual educational webinars. It is social events such as the wine pairing virtual event where the wine shows up at the doorstep. And it's hybrid, bringing in the virtual component, which is actually where we like to spend a lot of time with our clients because it bridges the two client pockets, the ones that are in your geographical area and the ones that are not, and having them experience a live in-person educational event. And we do recommend the hybrid more for educational events and social events because that's kind of weird to have a holiday party and go, well, you can log on and look at what we're doing.
Right.
So the educational events really are better events to do the hybrid streaming in, and you can make it unique for those that do log on virtually. You can send them a gift card for a DoorDash or a dinner or a bottle of wine or something to emulate what you're doing in person to make them feel part of the group.
Yeah, when we did a trivia event with my advisor, my wife and I, who normally doesn't like to do these sorts of things, but she got into it, and he sent a little kit beforehand, so everyone had a kit of things in front of them as part of the trivia, and plus some snacks and all kinds of little things. So something arrived before the event that was tied into the event. So I've seen that done a lot, which is I think is pretty cool. Now, some of the folks listening in are small firms, solopreneurs, small teams. Others are part of larger operations. So given the range of capacity, how many events should advisors consider hosting each year? Is there a magic number?
Bill, there isn't a magic number. It's quality over quantity.
Okay.
There isn't a minimum and there isn't a maximum. If you are a newer advisor or you haven't done events, we highly recommend walking before running to figure out your process and your budget. It depends if you have a team to put on the event. Are you doing the event yourself and trying to run your day job at the same time by working with your clients on their financial plans? Do you want to do smaller events to spread out the number of events based on your budget? And again, it's based on what your clients want. If an advisor says, I want to do one event a month, 12 events, and your clients are busy professionals, busy parents, and they can't come every month, then that's a waste of your budget and your time and your resources. So it's, again, going back to the ideal client. What do they want? How many events? What type of events? Small events, large events, and that will help you develop an event calendar. You really do want to have a mix of educational and social if that's what they are interested in. And again, it's quality over quantity.
So Elyse and Angela, I have several more questions for you. I especially want to make sure we get a chance to share a few more case studies, specific events, results produced. But first, let's take a brief pause to listen to a word from our sponsor, Pod Rocket Influence Academy, brought to you by Proudmouth. First, they make this podcast possible, and their core business is helping financial advisors accelerate their influence through marketing activities like podcasting.
This podcast is sponsored by Proudmouth, the Influence Accelerators.
Proudmouth.
Tired of chasing potential clients? We help you spend less time selling and more time advising by amplifying your influence over a growing audience of magnetically attracted fans who will chase you down instead. Visit proudmouth.com to learn more.
Be your own loud.
I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention one of our resources designed to help you acquire more right fit clients. Our newest, even better than before, Academy of Relationship Marketing is ready to help you truly build a strong culture of client acquisition to referrals to personal introductions. After all, this is how most of your ideal clients would prefer to meet you, through a recommendation from someone they already trust. So do yourself a favor and visit thekatesacademy.com. That's thekatesacademy.com. You can go through everything on your own, or you can add some one-on-one coaching with me. And if you decide to join our academy, use the coupon code TCA200. That's the Kates Academy, TCA200, to save $200 off the already affordable tuition. Now back to my conversation with my featured guests, Angela York and Elyse Stoner, founders of the firm Event Advisors. Before I ask you to share some specific case studies, I'd like you to tell everyone how they can obtain a copy of your event checklist that you're making available for free to our listeners. And while you're at it, please let everyone know how they can contact you about the great work you're doing for advisors.
Bill and listeners, you can find our tips, our checklists. You can sign up for our email newsletter. We promise we won't spam you. We are just providing tools and information that will help you in your event planning. And you can find all of that at www.event-advisors.net. That's event-advisors.net. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn. We have individual LinkedIn profiles as well as Event Advisors, our business page. And we also put different tips, tools, tricks, case studies, successes, wins, funny anecdotes. We have an emergency checklist that everybody should have when they're planning an event, of things that over decades we have found that we've needed for one reason or another, whether they are reading glasses or hem tape or an extra USB plug. But we often share stories that even now when we plan an event, little things happen, and we always add those into our emergency kit. So
I like it. Reading glasses, hem tape, right? In case the hem of a skirt
that was
or dress,
newly added last week.
Yeah. Don't you need an iron for the hem tape, or maybe not? I guess that's something different.
No, because there's safety pins in there too.
I love it. You're ready for everything. So, and all those links are in the show notes, so people can look there. All right, so let's get to the fun part. Some more examples, case studies represent the kind of work you do, maybe a glimpse of some of the ideas that you've helped other advisors with. I know folks love to hear these specifics.
Would love to share some stories.
Yeah.
As we alluded to a little while ago, we were talking about a virtual event, a virtual wine tasting event. This is one of the first projects that Elyse and I worked on right at the beginning of the pandemic. We had an advisor in Texas that was really looking to continue developing relationships with clients amidst the chaos that we were going through at the time. And we sat down with them and we started with the whole ROM wheel. Let's look at the business goals. Let's look at the event goals. And the event goals were to deepen the relationships with these clients. These clients liked to travel. A lot of them were retired already. Obviously, we couldn't travel at that time. So we decided to do a virtual wine tasting event with a winery in Napa Valley, California. And we set up this event where not only was the wine delivered to the attendees, we partnered with a cheese vendor in Oregon, and we had a cheese and charcuterie board shipped to them. So they were excited about the event. They were receiving these packages and instructions on how to log in. And when they logged in, the winery in Napa was set up with the sommelier and the camera looking into the vineyard. So these clients that were wanting to travel, they were virtually seeing someplace that they wanted to go visit. And the entire event was this experience, again, building on the positive emotional memory. So from the invitation to the kits that showed up to logging on and having this great scenery in the background. And it didn't end when everybody said goodbye on Zoom. Again, we captured the information on what wines they wanted. So when they were going through the tasting, and this can be done in an in-person tasting as well as this virtual tasting, the advisory team was paying attention on what the clients were saying, what they liked, what they didn't like. And that information went into the CRM. So then when we were working with the follow-up, which we had planned when we were planning the event, they were able to go back to their attendees and not only ask, not ask, did you like the event, but instead ask, which wine did you like?
Mhm.
Which was your favorite cheese? I think there were some chocolates in there. So capturing that information and wrapping it up into the follow-up.
And can we talk a little bit about the follow-up?
Yes,
Because
please.
what we hear from a lot of our clients is, I know I'm supposed to do it. I forget. I don't have time. Or as I always say, because we don't make time. So there were a couple things that we did. Like Angela said, we talked about what the follow-up was going to look like as we were planning the event, so we didn't have to scramble. But we also worked with this firm to figure out, how do we motivate the advisors to actually do their follow-up? Because, again, I'm busy, I'm this, I'm that. So one of our favorite pieces that we love, it's called gamification. It's a fancy sort of event-y kind of word, which is make it a contest. So this particular advisor, again, being in Texas, had a very competitive group of advisors. So we said to them, well, why don't you set up a scoreboard? And when people are making their follow-up calls and they're putting this information, we're telling them exactly what to ask. When they are making those calls and putting that information into the CRM, they get points. And figure out what that window of time is. Is it 3 days? Is it 5 days? Whatever works for you. Keep score. You could even go as far as having a visible scoreboard that's like on the TVs in the office that people see when they come into the office every day. And I said to them, I'm like, oh, and you could do a gift card for like Starbucks for the person who completes the most. And the advisor's like, our advisor's like bourbon. I'm like, give them bourbon. I don't care.
Right.
But again, it's the sort of the other side of this event too, and motivating your team to do that follow-up. Follow-up is only as good as the fact that it gets done. There are some other things that we talk to our clients about as it relates to quality feedback versus quantity feedback. Like Angela alluded to, don't ask, did you like it? That doesn't really give you any information, but like, what was your favorite kind of wine? Because then that gives you some more information that you can use later on.
Yeah. Open-ended questions like, did you find this helpful, valuable? Yes, no, it doesn't really help, but digging in a little bit deeper. Do you ever also encourage advisors to ask for what could we have done differently or better to improve the next event?
You can, but again, that's really an open-ended question.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of we're trying to figure out what we want to do for the next event. Here's 3 choices. Here's 5 choices. Would you rank them? because, if I said to you, if I asked you that question, usually the answer is, oh,
Right. Right.
but if you say, here's some choices, like the example we give, is if I said to you, hey, Bill, I hear you're not feeling well. Can I bring you something? And you may say, no, that's okay. But if I say, hey, Bill, I'm going to be stopping by the grocery store. Would you like me to pick up some salad and some chicken noodle soup for you? It's much more honed in, and it's either yes or, I don't really like chicken noodle soup. Can you get me some Italian wedding soup?
So being directive, being specific, will elicit a better response. It totally makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love this. So I promised the listeners to provide a couple of other podcast interviews I've conducted with advisors who've had success in events. So here you go. Get ready to write if you're as long as you're not driving. Top Advisor Podcast, episode number 5 with Joe DeSena, who has had success with many types of events, but especially retirement parties. Done very well with that, built a very successful business, mostly on the back of retirement parties. Episode 11, Randy Carver, who does a ton of events, does a monthly event and then does a huge palooza every year, has a big practice. Listen to what he does. And episode number 40 with Warren Brooks and Terry Parham, who do some pretty creative events. So that's Top Advisor Podcast episodes 5, 11, and 40. So last thing I want to talk about is a lot of advisors listening often have wholesalers, partners, if you will, to pay for the events. I know that you work directly with a lot of these partners, wholesalers. So just real quick, tell me a little bit more about your experience of working with the wholesalers and folks like that to help underwrite these events.
Wholesalers are your friends. A lot of advisors will raise an eyebrow going, yes, they call my office all the time. They want to have lunch with me. I don't have time. I just don't want to go there. But we encourage you, and we encourage all of our clients, and we actually do a lot of work in this space to get to know your wholesalers. They're great companies, they're great people, and they provide a lot of value. There's a horse's mouth article written on it. There's lots of information that you can find out there. But in a nutshell, the wholesalers, or if you're a wholesaler or a broker dealer, your product vendors. So again, think broader. If you're an advisor, work with your wholesalers. If you're a wholesaler, work with your product companies, and same with broker dealers. Tap into them, get to know them, because they can provide content for your events, for your educational events. They can provide great speakers from home office, from their corporate office, to really come in and be an expert in a field. If you're talking about 1031 exchanges or long-term care, or even market updates, they're out there every day talking to your competitors, to other people in different areas. They see what others are doing. They really have a pulse on the industry, and they can come up with so many ideas as to what they're seeing, what's working, what's not working. And they also have marketing budgets to help you support your events financially, and work with them. I mean, it's really a resource that you should tap into if you haven't already.
Yeah. I've been sponsored myself by a lot of wholesalers and other folks like that to bring value to advisors. So yeah, it's a great tool. My featured guests on today's show have been Elyse Stoner and Angela York. Their firm is Event Advisors, event-advisors.net. It's in the show notes. Elyse and Angela, thank you for all the value provided to our listeners today.
Thank you, Bill, for having us.
Thank you so much.
You bet. I was speaking at an event recently, and there were a lot of advisors in the room. We spent a lot of time on client gifts and events, particularly social events. And, sometimes I hear from advisors, what is all this thing about social events and doing all this? I don't like to do that, And I'm telling you, Here's the secret sauce to advocates for your business. All right. We all want advocates for our business. The secret sauce is what I call the business friendship. Right? It's not necessarily, going out drinking late at night, telling each other deep, dark secrets, but it's a business friendship. And those get created in these events. When you meet with people outside of the normal meeting circumstances, that's when you learn more about them and sometimes discover ways to help them through the work you do, and also just develop that business friendship, commonality, and that's what creates the advocates for your business. So,
Bill, you hit on a great point. You can even have events for your centers of influences that
yes.
really deepen those relationships to create the know, like, trust. So your events not only have to be for your clients, but think about your trusted partners.
Yep, absolutely. Invite them, let them get some of the goodies and build a relationship. So to you, the listener of this podcast, I want to ask a small favor. If you like the episode or like the podcast in general, please leave a 5-star review on the platform you're listening to the show. Not all platforms have a place for reviews, but if yours does, I'd be grateful. Thank you. If you haven't already, there are 4 places you'll want to visit in addition to event-advisors.net. For my latest book, go to languageofreferrals.com, languageofreferrals.com. For a bunch of guides, checklists, scripts, all kinds of good resources, referralcoach.com/resources. For the most comprehensive referral and introduction training in the planet, thekatesacademy.com. And to check out our coaching, different types of programs for advisors, go to coachcates.com, coachcates.com. This is Bill Cates reminding you that ideas do not make you more successful. Only acting on those ideas will bring you the success you desire. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you for listening to the Top Advisor Podcast, brought to you by Proud Mouse Pod Rocket Academy. I encourage you to visit my website, referralcoach.com, for links to my books, online courses, and to register for the Cates Academy.